Okay, we is back. I wonder if it's the weather or the Seahawks or the Mercury station. This is the quietest, and I'm okay with it, but this is the quietest astrology night in how long have we been doing this? I think 6 years. I think. Actually, for whatever reason, another time that I was here by myself was, I think, the busiest night we ever had. And so I don't think it has anything to do with the talent or lack of it. Matter of fact, that time, the last time that Jeff wasn't here, I think he was in China. Yeah, because it was after a trip that we both made to Bali. Jeff went to China, and I came back here. And it was the presidential election right around that time. And I set up an empty stool and addressed him the way that whoever it was, the way the way Clint Eastwood did for Obama. So I addressed Jeff in the empty stool, which was a lot of fun. And Jeff made me promise I would never do something like that again. Yeah. Hi, again. I like this. Like, less people is actually cozier. It's like I almost want everyone to be sitting right here and me down off the stage sitting with you. But here we go. Okay, so this is it's like double jeopardy. This is the part where we look at three charts. The first chart that we have to look at tonight is Corey. The deal is that if I look at your chart, do this so that everyone in the room, even if I know who you are, everyone else in the room can know who, we're making fun of or trying to help or be compassionate about. Corey's chart, normally we require the birth date, place, and time, but I'd already put the data in and realized that he didn't have a time of day, and I thought I'd just ask him, and I did, and he didn't know. So I'm using this chart as an example of how we might look at a chart where we don't have an actual time. And I've had many, many clients over the years that do not have a time of day. In fact, I've actually had clients that didn't know what day they were born. They knew they were born around January 2nd. But there are countries where they're not nearly as concerned with a birth date as we are. And the deal is that the universe is holographic. You ever seen a hologram where you actually look at the picture and you can break it in half and you still have the same picture, and break it in half each time you still have the whole picture, but it keeps getting less and less detailed? Astrology is like that. Just knowing your sun sign or knowing your sun sign and your moon sign, one can talk in generalities. The more information we have, the more detail we can fill in. Knowing someone's birth date, we know not only where the sun is, because the sun only moves 1 degree in 24 hours, so we know where the sun is within a degree. And it's only 12 times a year that we might not know which side of the cusp someone was born on. But for all practical purposes, knowing someone's date of birth, we know the degree of the sun, and we know the degree of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because all the planets are moving slow enough that within a degree we know. The problem is that the moon moves 12 to 14 degrees a day. It moves a degree every 2 hours. So we don't know where the moon is roughly within 6 degrees of either sign, or of either side. So what I did for Corey, we'll get there. Yes, and someone said, and the ascendant too, but we're taking this inch by inch. The great Swami once said, "Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard." Okay, so what we have here, Corey was born on May 29th, and every year on May 29th, within a degree or so, the sun is at 7 or almost 8 degrees of Gemini, so Corey is a Gemini. Now here we have a problem, and I'm just really using this as an example of how we can work around, because I did this chart for noon, and the moon shows here at 2 degrees, 2 out of 30 degrees of Cancer. The moon moves 1 degree every 2 hours. What that means is that the moon moved into Cancer 4 hours ago, or at 8 o'clock on the day that Corey was born. Are you with me here? And so if Corey was born prior to 8 o'clock, his moon was in Gemini, where his sun is anyhow. So he has that whole Gemini, two sides. The Gemini is the twins. They can show up either this way or that way. They can show up as the happy one or the sad one, or the passive one or the aggressive one. Gemini is about choices. It's about the twins represent duality. However, if he was born after 8 o'clock in the morning, the moon would be in Cancer, which would make him more of a homebody, make him perhaps more nurturing and caring and emotional. But here's where it's interesting. In Corey's chart, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, and if you find your time of day and get it to me, I'd be glad, Corey, to run your chart and clarify whether you are a Gemini or a Cancer moon. But the reason why it may not matter is that Corey's sun is already in Gemini, so he's got Gemini stuff cooking. We'll talk about that in a moment. He was born with Mars in Cancer, so he already has that Cancerian sense of aggressing by being passive. You see, Cancer's the crab. Cancer kind of holds on to and waits. The crab kind of, hunts by waiting for something to come into, its environment and then snap. The crab holds on to things. The pinchers of the crab, once a crab has an experience, has a love, has a profoundly hurtful experience, or whatever, crabs, Cancers, will hold on to experiences, and even to their own detriment, they won't let go of the past. Cancers hold on to the past. It also makes them very endearing and very caring and very family-oriented and very nurturing. Are there Cancers or Cancer moons here that recognize this about themselves a little bit? So the thing is, though, interestingly enough, Gemini doesn't hold on to anything. So we get the. Did you hear the one about the schizophrenic Zen master who said, "Make me two with the universe"? So Corey's a schizophrenic Zen master. And the two sides of that Gemini nature are basically the part of Corey that can be interactive and clever and playful and not necessarily demeaning and kind of do the what-if dance. That's the Gemini side. But the Mars in Cancer is the side that really holds on to stuff and wants the real connection and wants the nurturing and to nurture and wants the sense of being protected and to protect those that he loves. So regardless of which side the moon falls on, we can say that about you. Does that sound like you a bit? Cancer moon. You see, he won't say it. He won't. Okay. So I have a Cancer moon, although my Aries when I'm on stage, I seem Aries, but the Cancer, it's hard to tell how someone with a strong Cancerian signature in their chart, it's hard to tell how they really feel. And of course, with the Gemini energy that Corey has, he might just be flippant and tell the joke, and that somehow gets him out of having to say exactly how he feels. The other thing that's significant in Corey's chart is the fact that Venus is in her home sign of Taurus, and I think of Jeff's line of Taurus. Jeff's a Taurus, and he says Tauruses are just fat, dumb, and happy. Well, I'm not sure he might be one of those, and I'm not saying which one. But Venus is what you like. It's what you're attracted to. And Venus in Taurus likes sensual pleasure, likes nice things, likes indulgence, likes the couch and a sandwich. Venus in Taurus can be lazy, unless it's in motion. Because with Taurus, once things get into motion, then it stays in motion. The other thing I think about Corey's chart that is interesting is the fact that there's a harmonious, I'm only touching on some of these, but there's a harmonious trine between the Mars, which is physicality. Again, Mars in Cancer, I passive aggressive. Not that every Cancer Mars person is always passive aggressive, but it's the idea of I'd rather get even than get mad. You know, it's the idea of I move forward cautiously and carefully, because Mars is how you move forward. However, with Mars harmonized with Pluto, there's not room to misinterpret. There's not room to misinterpret. That's too many negatives. When Corey has a position, you know what it is, because Pluto is power, it's intensity, and Mars and Pluto together it's a powerful end of the planet. It's a powerful planetary pair, and so there really is some strength and some strength of will. But the other piece of this is that Saturn is harmonized with Jupiter. And this is a good balance between making a plan and knowing what you want and how you're going to go about and getting it. That doesn't mean he always gets what he wants, but there's that sense of having some balance there. Now, without knowing the time of day, as someone said, we also miss one other important piece, and that is the rising sign or the ascendant. And there are those in astrology who believe that the ascendant is the singular most important thing in the chart. In fact, the word horoscope comes from the Greek, which means horo, hour, scope, view of. Like a telescope, scope is to see or to view. A telescope views things far away. A microscope views things that are tiny. In the Greek tradition, a horoscope was the view of the hour. Now, what views the hour is what's on the eastern horizon rising, because every day, every hour, there's something different rising. Every day the sun rises. So if you were born at sunrise, and you were born, as Corey was, with the sun in Gemini, if you were born at sunrise with the sun in Gemini, you'd have Gemini rising. But every 2 hours, there's a new sign that rises. So we don't have a clue as to what Corey's rising sign is. And the rising sign is how you're pinned, it's how you're nailed to reality. It's the personality. Jung called it the mask or the persona. I like to think of it as how we dawn on other people. It's the dance we dance when we meet someone new. You know, when we're younger, we don't know that we do the same things. But then as we grow older, we realize, we kind of can see our own patterns. You meet someone new and you like them or you don't like them, and you respond in a way that you would respond if you really like someone or really don't, or whatever it is. So we don't know here, and Corey at some point in time will get that information to me. I would suggest, though, from what it is that we do know, that over the past couple of years, and that Uranus and Pluto, remember those squares that we were talking about earlier, that Pluto moving through Capricorn moved opposite his Mars, and Uranus moving through Aries squared it. And there probably was events that rocked how it is that Corey moves about Mars in the real world. And I would suggest, just knowing from, what we know about the chart, but again, we don't have the ascendant to add to this, that it's probably things are mellower or kind of have began to find their own rhythm after a period of craziness or hecticness. Now, granted, if Corey was born late in the day, that moon could be later, and the moon could be even here at 7 or 8 degrees, in which case then the timing of what I just said was off. So it makes it difficult, but mostly I wanted to use your chart as an example of how we would approach a chart without knowing the time of day. Thanks for being a guinea pig. Yeah, the question was that if I put it at noon, wouldn't that put the sun up there? And the answer is yes, except because I had no idea what time it was, I told the computer to put Aries rising and to make the signs go around in their natural order so that I didn't make the mistake of assuming that the sun was in any certain house or area. So, good question. And again, if nothing else, having this, I mean, I hope that it was of little value or a little value to you anyhow. But, you know, the other thing that I would say that I think is important about your chart, Corey, is how in relationships you set up situations where you are attracted to the idea or the illusion. I'm looking here at the Mars opposite Neptune and the kind of confusion that can happen in relationships, whether they be business, friendship, love, parent, what doesn't matter. But there's that sense of lack of clarity that can be imagination and kind of hard sometimes to really know what's going on. And the other thing is these green lines here from the sun represent angles of adjustment and how it becomes part of your life to constantly make adjustments, constantly kind of re-gauge what you're doing, where you're going, how you're going to get there, and so on. Whereas other people, some people might just have a sense they know they do it. For you, it's a lot of kind of, not so much making it up as you're going along, but always fine-tuning. Not enough, too much, should have gone that way, I'm going to go, that kind of thing. Okay. Thank you. All right, I swear I just picked this. Where's April? April? Oh, right here. April. Pay attention, April. Okay, so in the spirit of full astrological disclosure, I would like to say that my birthday is also on April 6th. As is Ram Dass, Harry Houdini, and Lee Marvin. And I'm sure other people too, but those are the ones that I've picked in my life to say. And you just know this because a couple people died. I don't want to know about it. Okay, we don't care. All right. Anyhow, the thing that April and I have in common is we are both born on April 6th. The thing that we do not have in common is that I was not born in the month of Rick. Well, I was not named after the month I was born in. She was, apparently. Could we get more coffee for like everyone? Like maybe intravenous? Yeah, a round for the house. All right. So, April was born on April 6th. Her sun in the mid part of Aries is very closely opposite Pluto and very closely trine Neptune. What's interesting is I know a number of people born in the late 70s where they were born with their sun in Aries opposite Pluto and trine Neptune. The reason I personally find that interesting is that I was born with the sun opposite Neptune and trine Pluto. So I find this moment in time interesting, and we probably could exchange some war stories about relationships and the meltdowns and whatever, because the planet that's opposite the sun often appears in relationships in life. For me, it's Neptune. Neptune is the planet of ideals, of illusion, of dreams, of imagination. For April, it's Pluto, which is the planet of intensity, of power, survival, passion. And so the relationship issue here, I think, in some ways has a real element of intensity and engagement. And the dreams of Neptune actually feed it in a healthy manner. Whereas for me, you might say that the intensity of Pluto is the healthy thing, but it's the illusions or that become kind of the thing that appears as a repetitive theme. Regardless, Sun opposed Pluto is a very intense configuration, and over the next year and a half or two, Uranus, in its once every 84-year cycle, will come over your Sun. At the same time, Pluto will be squaring Pluto and the Sun. And so the Uranus-Pluto square that culture is getting, you and I, and everyone born on April 6th, because that's where the Sun is on that day, regardless of what year you were born, we're all getting over the next couple of years Uranus lining up with our Sun and Uranus squaring our Sun, and you also, Pluto squaring your Sun and also squaring your Mercury. Now, what this would lead me to believe is that the next few years of your life, you will see a lot of major transformation and shifting of the energies that may in some ways have to do with you reclaiming and taking your power back that perhaps has been projected away in relationships. Perhaps it's the other person who's been holding the cards or has the power, and in some ways it's about how you respond to that. Does this make sense at all? Or yeah. Okay. And so in some ways, I think as Uranus, once every 84 years, for those early Aries, Uranus has already gone over their Sun. For you Pisces people, Sun or Moon in Pisces, Uranus went over your Sun back maybe, 3 to 10 years ago. For you Aquarians, Uranus went over your Sun back around 10 to 17 years ago, because Uranus spends about 7 years in a sign. When Uranus lines up with your Sun, there's no other time in our lives when we can, in some way, burn down the old and create the new. Remember, Uranus is the lightning striking. And the lightning striking can burn down Yellowstone, and we can say, oh my God, it's a disaster. This beautiful park has been lost. But the fact is that 20 years after the infamous Yellowstone fires, Yellowstone is more vigorous in its forestation and its flora and fauna than it ever has been in the past. Because what happens is that when we clear out the underbrush, it makes room for the new. So to you and to me, I say, wring out the old and bring in the new. Don't try to hold on to what it is you thought you would have forever. You'll be better off without it, even if it sucks. While you're going through the process. I mean, it was no fun, being a deer living in Yellowstone and having, your forest and your family, your home destroyed. So I'm not saying that. See, Uranus doesn't care about good or bad or hard or easy. All Uranus cares about is clearing the decks. It basically relieves tensions. So wherever there are tensions in your life, in our lives, when Uranus lines up with our suns, that's a time for us to bring that out into the open and to let go of those things that are holding us back. And with Pluto squaring it, there's a bit of a struggle involved. You may run into resistance. You may run into, problems making it all happen. And we're not talking about something that just happens one day. We're talking about a process that probably has already begun, even though the events haven't maybe, kind of continued on through. We're talking a several-year process here. The other thing about your chart that I think is important to mention is that Saturn and Venus are opposite each other in your chart. Venus, you're in Aries, but you have Mercury, Venus, and Mars all in Pisces. You're in Aries who's a wuss. Now, okay, that's a contradiction in terms, and I don't mean that offensively. I mean, instead of wearing black leather like an Aries would wear, riding a motor, riding your Harley, all those planets in Venus would rather have Angora, and be riding on a cushy velvet, whatever. It's a softer Aries. It's a more compassionate, it's a more spiritually oriented, because all these planets in Pisces in some ways connect you with imagination, with dreams, with spirituality. And yet Venus, who loves being in Pisces, because Venus, remember I said Venus doesn't like being in Capricorn because Venus is warm and soft and loving, and Capricorn is a bit more boundary oriented and rule driven. Well, Venus loves being in Pisces because it's soft, it's compassionate, it's watery, it's nurturing. And yet your Venus is opposite Saturn, which says something in your makeup, something from your childhood taught you early on that you couldn't let Venus be as soft as she felt. That you ran into issues with either people in your face or boundary issues or things that in some way that were difficult because Saturn is difficult. Saturn Venus says you don't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. Because Saturn in some ways delays gratification. And here's the problem, is that the Leo moon is fiery. The Aries sun is fiery. Fire knows now. Fire doesn't know yesterday or tomorrow. Fire knows now. Saturn says not now, wait. And so I think some of the dance of this chart is about the what you need to do to survive in life, in relationships, and how you sometimes have to wait for the goodies because they don't come as quickly as the Aries wants it. The Aries is, I want it and I want it now. That make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Happy birthday. You should come here on astrology night in April and we'll share a cake. Anne? Anne, October 29th, 1971, 10:30 in the morning in Seattle, 10:30 p.m. You wrote a.m. The bad news is
You should have stuck with it. You had a better one coming.
the bad news is you messed up. The good news is we can take care of it like magic. PM.
The moon's going to be in a much better place.
That looks like it's for April. You just changed.
Thank you. Let's try that again. Whoever said that. Thank you for keeping me on the straight and narrow here. All right, let's try this again. Doom to doom to doom to doom to doom. 10:30 p.m. Zoom and a zoom and a okay. Let's get the moon's aspects in here. Displayed points, aspected points, and okay. All right. So now we have Anne, who is.
Holy jeez. We're going to need 10 hours for this.
What's that?
She said, wow, that's really complex. We're going to need 10 hours for this.
No, she's a Scorpio. We can do it in 30 seconds. Some of you have heard me say this before. The most amazing thing in the universe is being loved by a Scorpio. Until the part where they kill you. Am I wrong? Been there. Okay. Well, my father's a Scorpio. My daughter's a Scorpio. I have a collection of a few X-somethings that are Scorpio suns or moons or whatever, and so I know of what I speak. Anyhow, Scorpio sun, Pisces moon, Cancer rising. Scorpio sun at 6 degrees of Scorpio, moon at 14 degrees of Pisces, Cancer rising. Cancer, water. Scorpio, water. Pisces, water. It's water all the way down. Water, astrologically, is emotion. I have a name for you. Swamp thing. No, there is a lot of wetness in this chart, a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling, a lot of passion, a lot of compassion. It's the chart processes in the realm of emotion more than anything else. However, there are a couple of pieces that do lift the energy up out of the murky, nurturing and or icy swamp, depending upon how the feelings are. Now, you're not just a Scorpio. You're a Scorpio with Mercury and Venus in Scorpio, which means that you can speak your mind, and when it's yummy, and when it's not, it stings. There's that sense of Mercury in Scorpio has the ability to use its sharp perceptions without much compassion. However, the Pisces moon is a problem because the Pisces moon is compassionate, and so the problem. I would imagine that you actually can temper yourself more than people might think that you do, because that Pisces moon is harmonized with the Scorpio stuff. The other piece that I think is very significant is this fiery little piece here of Jupiter and Neptune, which is the spiritual connection, which is the imagination, which is the vision. And it's in fiery Sagittarius, which is not about the feelings now. It's about the potential of what could happen. This is the part of you that whatever it is going on in the moment, it's the part of you that can kind of reach out beyond and kind of get a sense of what the potential is. However, you pay a price when you do that because Saturn is opposing it. And so it's almost like even when you do that, something says, but be real. Don't make this crap up. You can dream, but show me where it's coming from and how you're going to get there. And there's that sense of Saturn is a bit of a reality check in this chart. This is a good example of, I was talking about the Uranus. We go back maybe 5-6 years, and Uranus was moving through Pisces, and Uranus went over your moon maybe 6 years ago. And I would imagine that there may have been some major change, meltdown, change on the home front, something that in some ways moved you from where you were to where you are now. Anything come to mind? Yes, but we don't want to talk about it. No, I got it. I get it. But that's how Uranus works. As far as what's coming up now, there's not a lot that stands out for me. There's always stuff going on, but you're not getting hit by the brunt of the Uranus. You're coming into your Uranus opposition. At age 29, Saturn comes back to where it was when we were born, and we have to grow up. At age 42, and these are all give or take a year, but at age 41, 42, Uranus reaches its halfway point in the cycle, and you're coming into your Uranus opposition now, and it's a point at which we want to reclaim all the fun things that we gave up in order to be a grown-up at age 29. So this is it's some astrologers call this the opening volley to the midlife crisis. However, your midlife crisis has been a bit serious because Saturn, in its 29-year journey, Saturn over the last year went over your sun, over the last year, year and a half, and is still messing around with your Venus and your Mercury. So Saturn is kind of, it pulls the energy in. It's constrictive. It's, you get what you deserve. It's good news and bad news. And often there's a kind of having to pull in and work hard and make things real, but it's also often in response to something that maybe isn't going or didn't go the way you thought or you wanted it to. And I would say that even though Saturn is still there and there may still be some restriction because Saturn is past the sun, I think the main events are over, but it's still messing around with your Mercury and Venus, which might make you feel like you don't have as much as you might want, whether it's money or love or nice things or your goals, or there's something that feels like there's stuff in the way. And yet I would say by this late summer and on into the fall, that Saturn will move in December. It moves out of Scorpio and on into Sagittarius, where it starts affecting other areas, but at least the personal pieces of your life begin to feel as if they really lighten up. I would imagine that you've probably been in a bit of a, not so much a funk, but in a heavier phase. You got serious stuff to deal with, and you're dealing with it, and that's the way it is. We don't really get to change that. So that's what I have to say, and that's what I have to say, and I hope that was of interest or made some sense to you, those of you whose charts I took, and to those of you whose charts I didn't. If anybody wants a business card to get in touch with me, I have cards here. Jeff and I both do readings, and feel free to send me an email. And Jeff and I also do a daily video videocast that's called Planet Pulse, and you can find it by going to Tarot, that's Tarot, tarot.com, and it's about a 2-minute a day video of Jeff and I kind of talking about, like what I did here about the month, but for just, to get a zeitgeist, a feeling of the zeitgeist or of the day. And for those of you who don't know, I also write a daily horoscope column. You can find that also at tarot.com or the LA Times or Huffington Post or AOL or I don't know where else, but or you can send me an email and I'll send you the links to where you can find them. Thank you. Can I go home now? Wait. Did you hear about the new restaurant on Mars? No. Good food, no atmosphere.